Yes, I think Zelensky, in a very impassioned plea to the Americans, appealed to their history, their sense of where they are right now, the sense of the future, and all the rest of it, to come to the aid of Ukraine. And they need more than weapons. They have to close that sky above Ukraine. They have to either have a no-fly zone to prevent Russian forces there, or they're going to need a humanitarian no-fly zone. They need something. And I've got to say something. I watched that little film that he produced in his 18-minute address. And in my many years of looking at propaganda and war films, etc., it is the most expertly filmed thing I've ever seen. You know, it touches the heart. I mean, you'd have to be dead not to respond to that film and the loss of life and the openness. I mean, it's quite clear right now that Russia is using Ukraine as, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. And I think Zelensky he's calling the Americans bluff. He says, you either represent the forces of the future or we're gone. And, this is the first time in living memory for any of us that a nation state is disappearing, disintegrating before our very eyes, not only with the cameras, but with social media and the rest of it. And so this is a pretty impassioned plea. Now, a number of the comments afterwards, people want to make things available. But keep in mind, it's not just Americans who think that sending those jets over there, that is having them flown from the American base to Ukraine, are going to cause a conflict. The former air marshal of NATO in France has made the same point in European networks, that this is an automatic tripwire to a conflict between the Russian Federation and NATO. So Zelensky's right up against it, that everybody wants to give him help, and they tell him they can't give him air cover because it'll make things worse for Ukraine, though that's a hard one to accept, and that it will bring the Americans or NATO into direct conflict with Russia, which would do nobody any good. And, all the things they're doing for Zelensky right now in Ukraine, nothing's going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I mean, Ukraine is falling apart, and we're watching this slaughter of people. And you know what? Even if the NATO thing weren't on the table, the fact that Ukraine is a chartered member of the United Nations in 1945 suggests that organization has to pick up its act a little bit and do something. If NATO can't do something, at least the United Nations should go. Or is a very violent expression. There are a lot of atrocities in wartime, whether it was Curtis LeMay using nuclear weapons on Japan, which is already defeated, or the Americans in Vietnam, or, the Russians in Afghanistan. We can call anybody we want a war criminal. It certainly doesn't clear the way for a diplomatic solution, and the fact that the rhetoric gets in the way of the substance is not very helpful at all. I think Biden is doing everything he can right now to provide for himself, and I say this advisedly, an alibi when this is all over, when Ukraine disappears from the face of Europe. Biden can say, look, I did everything I could. And there'll be a lot of people in his party and the Republican Party who say that he didn't do everything he could. Now, there are some folks in Washington, particularly on the Beltway, they've been Russophobes for a long time now. They're spoiling for a fight with Russia. They think they can handle this, but they can't. And I got a hunch that the feelings beyond Washington are a little less enthusiastic than the people in Washington. I mean, only 40% of the American people, maybe 37%, approve of going to war with Russia over this incident. But they support the president's policies. So, in a sense, Americans in the hinterland, they know what this means. They would mean this is World War III. So the president's between a rock and a hard place. If he does too much, we're going to have a war we don't want. And if he doesn't do enough, Ukraine is going to disappear from the map of Europe. Well, he's not going to cave because of the sanctions. That'll take quite a while to reach to him, because you've closed 850 McDonald's in Russia doesn't mean President Putin is going to cave anytime soon. Those sanctions will take a long time to reach him. I think he didn't bring enough troops with him to invade, to occupy Ukraine. He knows that. 180,000, 200,000. you need that many troops to occupy the south side of Chicago, for goodness sakes. So he always hoped for a quick victory, and he hoped that the military would probably roll over on him, but he didn't count on the resistance. And at the end of the day, Zelensky is going to get what he could have got on day one. He is going to be forced to renounce NATO membership. He's going to be forced to renounce control of the Donbass, and he's going to have to forfeit on Crimea. At the end of the day, he's going to get the same thing he could have got on day one. But I think Ukrainian national honor has been satisfied, and ask people right now to die for nothing, because this is only going to have one ending. This is going to be a war of exhaustion at the end. That is, the Ukrainians will exhaust themselves fighting the Russians. But what chance does the local militia have against incoming rockets and planes and artillery? None at all, as a matter of fact. So it's a Pyrrhic effort in the end. They can't win this thing. So I think we should get to the negotiating table as soon as possible. And I'd like to see the United Nations do just a little bit more than it's doing right now, because obviously NATO cannot control this. And if the hotheads in Washington get their say, we're going to be into something we can't control at all. And I've always said, in all the wars I've studied all of America's wars and half of the other wars too. There is a point in a war where things just take over, okay? No matter what we want to do. Various things happen to people when events get out of control, and I think we're very, very close to losing control of what we can actually accomplish in Ukraine if we don't do something definitive right now. We don't want to go to war, but we don't want them to be defeated. Well, I tell you what, that's not going to work. Something's going to happen like that. And Zelensky, he's still on the catch and kill list, so he's going to have to be very careful where he ends up. He'll probably end up in Warsaw or someplace like that. But the other day, I was very much enamored of what the Turkish diplomacy was doing, trying to get the foreign ministers at the table and talking about a possible summit at the top. I think NATO's kind of given up on this. I think the UN's given up. EU is can't do much about it. But I think, and China's not going to do anything about it. So we're going to need nations such as Turkey, caught between Russia and Ukraine, interest in both places, to be the honest broker. And that's how we're going to